All right. So let's take a look really quickly at 1.6. 1.6 adds something new that we haven't seen yet, and that's that idea of how do I get input into a small program? How do I have a user tell me something, um, and how do I get that? So, a couple of things about inputs that I want to make sure we're aware of. So, input says we're going to assign it to a variable. So typically, so we have a variable, we're going to use this assignment operator, so equals, and then we have the function input. And input, we can put in some prompts and say, please enter your name. All right, so I'm going to make this bigger just for a second so we can see it. There we go. All right, so some kind of variable, and we're going to assign it a value based on input. Now, we can also do some other weird things, but what I want to look at is whatever we do as an input, um, comes across into our computer as a string. So even if, so please enter your age. And so I'm going to create a variable. So notice I used camel casing and I said my age equals that. So if I looked at this in terms of a string type, my age is going to be a string. Always. Everything we do is an input. So maybe I wanted to print in 10 years will be, and I thought, well, great, I can just do this and say print my age plus 10. So logically, that makes sense in my brain that I could do that. That I could take my age and I could add 10 to it. Or if I didn't want to put the addition here inside of my print statement, and I wanted to set it on its own line. And sometimes I do that on when I'm starting to code because I want to make sure everything is tight and cohesive and I know what everything's doing. So sometimes it's easier to do things like into age. Lots of comments will help you as you start going. And so my age equals my age plus 10. So we're taking the original my age over here, we're adding a value of 10 to it and putting it back in. So in theory, if I run this, so I'm going to run, and yes, I'm going to save it, and I don't remember what this one's called. So U1 M1 A6 dash. Okay. Oh, I get an invalid syntax error. Well, let me try it again. Let me see if I can figure out what's going on here. So run module. So it's saying that I've got invalid syntax somewhere in here. So it's identifying this. Huh. So let me see if I can figure out what's going on. So if I put a comma in there, is that going to fix it? So please, oh, so we're on to something. I forgot to put a comma to separate it. So, oh, whoa, what is this? So what it's telling me there in this line, my age equals my age plus 10, it can only concatenate string, so not an integer to a string. Okay. So at some point, I have an issue here because it's if I took out this, and here's a good troubleshooting tip is notice I can put that pound sign in, wipes out that entire line. So now if I run it, save it first, it's not syntax correct in terms of it's not telling me what that is in 10 years, but we have to figure out what this problem is. And the reality, we brought it in as a string. I can't add a value to a string. Now, I can do some other things, but I can't necessarily take that. So I have to do what's called casting into an integer. So I have to somehow convert this to an integer. So I have to turn my age into an integer. So luckily, I have a formula here. So that is going to take that input and it's going to convert it. When I do this like this, my age equals the integer of my age. Now, a couple of problems with that if we put in one, I'll show you. So let's run this. I want to show you the biggest issue we have. So 54, my age in 10 years will be 64. Well, that made me kind of sad to look at that. Well, maybe that was bad. My age 10 years ago was. I need to probably change that a little bit. So that worked. Well, that's great. But watch what happens. And we don't have any way to do. So the problem is if I put something else in there, it doesn't know how to convert ABC into an age. So very, very shortly, we're going to find some techniques that will work to solve that. Now, um, right now we don't have those in our arsenal, but I just wanted to make you aware of that. So maybe you put in into your age, it must be a number, something like that. All right, and you can do all kinds of other things. Make this as pretty as you want to. So that is the basics of input. So I'm going to take this out of here now. All right. Take all of that out. Okay. The other thing I wanted to show you up here, um, if you notice, I did something weird up there. Did that input, it didn't print up here. I used what's called triple quotes. And triple quotes allow me, if I want to do comments, but I have a long blurb of text I want to utilize. So maybe I found something. And I wanted to publish all these instructions. So I'm going to come over here and just copy some random text. Now, granted, I'd probably want to cut it into pieces because it's not all good enough. But so now I have all this text items in here. Because I put it so it allows multi-line, um, essentially I can put in comments this way also. So now if I run this, it's not going to display any of that. So none of that pops up. The only weird thing is it shows up as green. So just be aware of that if you see that, what that actually is. So triple quotes, enclose this and hide it also. So we can do multi-lines not visible to the user. All right. Pop over here. All right. So our first step. So here we're going to, and they show you a couple of items here, um, what to work on it. So write the code to assign input to variables for student age, student GPA, and student name. So they're using Camel Case, and they're all putting those in. Um, So here, so if we do step number 3 through 6, maybe is the easiest way to look at that. So we want to input for student age. So instead of shortening it as much as they did, I'm just going to put it this way. Student age is equal to input please enter your age. Then I'm going to do the same thing for the next one, which was my tiny little eyeballs. We're going to do GPA. So I tend to spell things out just because it makes it all right. And what was the last one we were pulling in? Age, name. Okay. So student. So now we can get all three of their pieces of data. So if I run that, please enter your age, your GPA, and your first name. Today I feel like a mark. So it's got all that data in those variables. So now we have to figure out how to get that data back out. So I'm going to slightly see if I can squeeze this over just a little bit, make a little bit more room and still see part of this. All right. So the next piece then is we want to output what that is. And I will say there's a couple things here that I clean up, but for now we get those three pieces of data. So now you could just do a print statement. My age is, and notice I put this space in here so that it should move it over one space, and then you could do student age. So notice because I'm calling a variable, I don't have to put that in quotes. In fact, if I put it in quotes, it's just going to show me student age, what I had put there in quotes. So again, that copy and paste, because I'm doing these all as just real quick print statements or a way to output my, I could just change this. GPA is, and so then I could even put in, so notice how if I copy and paste it, I can speed that along. So I'm a big proponent of copying and pasting. My name is, so now we can get this information and we can output it. So we'll do, to see if that actually works, enter your age, very young college student. So it just puts those items out there. So my age is, my GPA is. Now, there's a lot of other different things we can do to make that prettier, because one of the things when I look at that is, man, those aren't all lined up. So my OCD on that would force me to go back in and reformat some of those pieces. But, all right, so we can put code in, and we can take code back out, and you can actually check then. So what kind of code it is, and if you go, man, I forgot how to do that. Um, if you get something. So you go, oh, let me show you that we can go to 100 different places, but if I just say return type of variable Python, and it says, oh yeah, the type function, that's what it is. And so you can usually find out stuff really, really interesting very quickly that way. All right, so the next couple pieces say, all right, write the code to prompt the user for the name of their favorite city and assign it to fav city. Write the code to print my favorite city is blank and concatenate with the city, i.e. my favorite city is Monroe. Uh, create variables for parent's name, parent's age, and get mail. Create prompt inputs for parent's name, ages, and yes, no to being on an email list. All right. Print out a concatenated statement using all three of the input variables. So there also is this idea of concatenation we haven't talked a whole lot about here. And you can print all of these just doing what I've showed you. But one of the things that's really interesting with a lot of our languages like Python, um, I can actually put things together, even though they're strings. I can merge those strings together. So what if I just, so I just going to call one test equals plus, so let's see what happens. So I'm asking it to add the student age and the student's GPA. So if I had already converted those to numerics, that would be a weird thing to add together. So, but let's see what this does. So I'm going to run this. Yes, I'm going to save it. My age is 10. My GPA is 1.1. Oh, weird. So it actually took, so here's my output that I thought was interesting here. So it actually takes those and it makes one big string out of them. It's called concatenation. In other words, we put that all together. So we could also put our outputs that way, and you could do things with those strings that way. So instead of setting it up where we have part of those in strings and part of them coming in as variables, you can actually put all of this together and do some really interesting things. So the other thing you could do then, so man, I didn't like that those were together like that. I can put a space in there. So now I could manipulate that even a little more, and I could add like a space in between the two of them, or I could add a test piece, or I could add, all kinds of stuff in. So we could create one big giant variable that has everything in it, if you wanted to. So when they talk about concatenate, that's what we're really doing is we're putting those strings together, and we can do all different kinds of things with it. And as we progress, you'll see that there's some nice pieces to that. So it actually says print a concatenated statement using all three of the variable inputs. Thank you, Charles. You are 57. Want emails? No. So in other words, they're doing something very similar here, and they're just putting all these pieces together. And you can even do it inside of this. Um, so instead of using a comma to add that separation, you could add them together and do it that way. So practice it, try it, and use, there is nothing you will break in Python. Guaranteed. I hope. No, you won't break anything. And that's how you learn some of this is just trying. Like, well, let me try this. And then it kind of grabs your brain into those concepts.